But let's crack into this one. Today, I am honoured to have one of New Zealand's greatest lads with me. He is a genuine, all-round good sort. He may not have played professionally, but it's fair to say he's been the face of sport for a very long time. He's also the host of New Zealand's favourite podcast and Staff Chat, and I know he's had some journey along the way. It is the great man himself, Mark Stafford. Welcome, Staffy. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Jimmy, I appreciate the work you put into your intros, mate. It makes you feel good.
That's the goal. Pump you up, get you ready to go. But it's
and who would have thought that you would be interviewing me after all those years ago when I first met you and I gave you a lesson on how to be a bookmaker?
Yeah, that's true. You've interviewed me a lot throughout my career, so it's quite nice to be able to turn it around on you.
Yeah, nice. We'll see how you go.
But I do remember that in Wellington when you came in, you saw my bookmaking odds for the Surf to Peak and you saw that my market was way off. I didn't want to have anyone at too higher odds because I didn't want to have to pay anyone out. So you caught me on that and taught me a lesson and made me bump a few prices up.
Yeah. Your percentages were so far out, but you were a sponge, mate. You really wanted to know. Oh, no, we can't have Kellen Gibbons too high. We can't have him too high. Yeah, Snakey will win. Yeah, like 5 guys under $3. It was just a rort.
I still took the money. And I still had punters coming. Oh, the boys love a punt.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you'd imagine. But anyway, got a lot to get through with you. So let's start right back at the start. Take us right back to what it was like for a little Staff growing up.
Yeah, it was interesting. We moved around a lot, actually, born in Gisborne. And but we left there when I was, I think, 4.
Yeah.
Went to Hamilton, started school in Hamilton. We were only there for 18 months. Then went to Christchurch. Right. And we were there about 2 years. And then I started school in Hamilton only briefly. Then, a couple of years or so in Christchurch. That's where I started playing rugby when I was 5.5 for Linwood. And the mighty Linwood, Fergie McCormick country, and then up to Palmerston North. And so I'd lived in 4 cities by the time I was 7. Dad was a rep for the Europa Oil Company that was subsequently bought out by BP a few years later. And then we settled in Palmy. So I grew up in Palmy, did pretty much all my schooling in Palmy, and went to Palmy Boys. Played rugby right from, as I say, from 5 till I was 16. And then had a bit of a car accident and could never play rugby again, which was gutting because it was in my 6th form year, and we had an awesome first 15 at Palmy Boys that year. We actually had the Moaska Cup. Oh, and it was an awesome first 15, and I just made the second 15. We had trials. I knew I wouldn't make the firsts. But I made the second 15, which we used to play all the other first 15s around the district. But then, a shocker of a car accident and the first Tuesday of the May school holiday, so never got to play a game.
Jeez. So what were you like at rugby? Were you quite talented? In what position?
Well, I was quite lucky that, like, from when I first shifted to Palmy, I was a second 5. My whole life I was a second 5. And I had a first 5 by the name of Gareth Williams, and he was unbelievable. He was a little guy, but he was like D-Mac, you know. He was just a freak. And I played outside him from when I was 7, right through primary school, intermediate, secondary school. He made the first 15 the year I made the seconds. But he made me look good, mate. I was lucky. I had a bit of pace, actually, Jimmy.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of pace, and he was rapid, and I was about the only person in the team in the juniors that could keep up with him. So my instructions were just to run on his shoulder, and if he needed help, which he really did, was to just I was the man in support. But his classic move was like half back to first 5 in the open side, and he'd just loop around and run down the blind so no one can catch him, and he'd just run the sideline and score tries. And he was a freak. He was a freak.
Did you ever think about making rugby as a career or progressing it any further?
No, well, it wasn't professional then. And it was just, I mean, in those days, there was just club. And then, like the Palmy Boys First 15 played Saturdays under 21 grade against Kia Toa and high school old boys and all that sort of thing. And then they'd play these school games on a Sunday or a Wednesday and that sort of thing. And then, as I say, our first 15. But then the progression from that was you'd go school, then leave school, go under 21s, and then you'd hopefully get, as a young fella, and 21, 22 was young to make a provincial side. So your next step would be Manawatu, and then All Blacks, no Super Rugby. And, but, Manawatu was strong. They had the Shield when I was a little fella in 78, and that was awesome. And I actually played a curtain raiser to a Springboks game. So I made the Manawatu under 12s reps, thanks to Gareth Williams, because he was the first 5. So yeah, I've still got the jersey, and then I was ball boy for the main game. So that's about as high a stage as I got, Jimmy.
And then talk to me about this car crash. Obviously, it must have been pretty bad to stop you from playing rugby ever again.
Yeah, so I had a good mate of mine, Aaron. He was the hooker in the second 15, and he was from Shannon, and his girlfriend lived in Opiki, which is the spud farming capital of the country. And he was playing second 15 for Palmy, and then he was playing for Shannon seniors, who played in the Horowhenua competition in the weekend. So we were going down on the Tuesday for his training in Shannon, and he was dropping us off at his girlfriend's place. And Gareth Williams, his girlfriend, so the first 15 were touring in Australia. His girlfriend was in the passenger seat. I was in the back seat, and we had to head on with a truck. And it was actually parked on the road at 6:30 at night, middle of winter. So pitch black, didn't have his lights on, and he was facing us on our side of the road, on the road. And we just drove straight into it, never saw it. Yeah. And so the driver, he was thrown out of the car, out the door. So we sort of hit, and the door flew open. He flew out there. I went over the back seat and I ended up in the dashboard, really. And when the police and the ambulance arrived, they thought I was the driver because I was in the driver's seat, because I'd come over the front. And Megan, who was in the passenger seat, she went through the windscreen into the truck. She died instantly. And I was, it was kind of weird, Jimmy. Like, I don't remember it. I still don't remember the crash, but I woke up in hospital in intensive care, and the weird thing was I didn't remember the crash, and I couldn't open my eyes, and my mum was sitting next to me on the bed, and I knew what had happened, but I don't know how I knew what had happened. And then about a week later, they moved me out of intensive care, and the ambulance driver came into the hospital room, and he had like this big fuzzy ginger hair and a big fuzzy ginger beard. So it's really distinctive looking. And I'd only just opened my eyes, and I looked at him and I went, "Oh, ambulance," like this. Yeah. And the ambulance driver said, "Oh, how does he know I was the ambulance driver?" And she goes, "Oh, I guess he recognizes you." And he said, "But I was actually dead when they got me, and they brought me back like a couple of times in the ambulance. And but I recognized them." And then my memory was, I was looking down on the crash scene, and that's how I saw him. And I was looking at this crash scene. It was like a dream. Wow. And I was like, "Oh, what's going on down there?" And it was like, "Oh, that's me. Oh, that's," and then I woke up and I was in intensive care. Yeah. And then a number of years later, and I'm probably talking 5 or 6 years later, I was watching a movie, and it was Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, and they were an Irish couple, and it was when the land grab was on in America, and they basically, everyone was on their horse, and they said, "Go," and you could ride out and go and stick your flag in a piece of land, and that you claim that as your farm. And Tom Cruise fell off his horse and hit his head on a rock. Yeah. And the camera did this big spiral up and looking down on him. Yeah. Like that was his spirit. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, that's what happened to me. And it took me back to, and then I understood what had actually happened. So, and I'm not a religious person, I'm not a spiritual person or anything like that, but I guess that's what they call an out-of-body experience. And yes, I was looking down on the crash scene of me being loaded into the ambulance. And and so that sort of ruined all contact sport, basically. I had a massively bruised brain, and they said it would take 5 years for the blood to drain from the brain. Oh, right. And so any tap, I got partial amnesia, so I forgot everything and everyone I'd met in the previous 6 months.
Except the ambulance driver.
Except the ambulance driver, yeah. But I looked at my school books from the first term and I could see it was my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing any of it.
Wow.
And knew people at school that were in my class. I didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
But I knew the people from the year before. So I spent a long time in hospital and then a long time going to specialists and stuff for the rest of the year. So I completely failed at sixth form because I just wasn't there. And so I did 2 years in sixth form. But yeah, I couldn't play rugby anymore. So I pretty much didn't do any sport that year. I started playing basketball the year after, which was probably a no-no because that's still semi-contact. But, you know, I took up swimming, I did golf, I tried snooker, darts, anything, you know, indoor bowls. But I really missed the rugby. And I remember when I was about 24, so like 8 years later, I went to have a brain scan and I got the all clear that I could play. So I went to Kia Tire and I said, I want to play. And been 8 years. And so I got a game with the Prezzies.
Yeah.
So I go along to the Prezzies and they said, where do you want to play? And I said, I'm second five. And they said, I've got heaps of backs. He said, we'll chuck you on the side of the scrum. So I played blindside flanker. And after about 2 minutes, there's this huge lock running straight at me. And I went down a tackle and I just let him through. I was just too scared. And then I looked at the coach and I said, take me off. You know, I didn't want to play scared, but I was so scared of getting knocked in the head. But so I'm pleased I had that 2 or 3 minutes because it had been an itch for 8 years.
Yeah.
And until I was confronted with that situation, I realised, man, I was just so scared of getting hit. And as you know, you can't play rugby scared.
Banksy's made a career out of it, but
he has, Yeah, I must ask him what head knock Banksy's had. And Ronan O'Gara, he's done all right.
Oh, but anyway, have you got any long-term effects from that incident, or is everything now fully sweet? What's the best way to describe it? I'm terrible with, so I get real travel sickness really bad. So anything to do with like dizziness, like I can't go on the circus rides and stuff like that because I'll pass out because I've just got no resilience in my head. Yeah.
I probably get 1 or 2 massive migraines a year.
Yeah.
And then when I struggle with the years, but probably I must have been about 29. So maybe 10 years later, I was having massive dizzy spells, like almost to the point I couldn't walk. Like I was having to hold the walls to walk. And I was like that for 3 months. And long story short, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I went to about 6 or 7 GPs before I finally went to one, and he said, it sounds like multiple sclerosis. And I said, another GP said that, but they said that's a woman's disease because I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, so what is it?
So it's I don't want to get too medical on you, but you get lesions on your brain. And so you've got on the nerve endings in your brain, you've got these protective like sheaths on your brain, on the nerve endings in your brain to look after them. Because if you've got exposed nerves on anything, it hurts like hell.
Yeah.
So, but your body thinks that those sheaths are an infection and it attacks them. Oh. So you've got your body attacking your own nerves. Yeah. And it usually affects your vision and your bladder are the two normal ones. So a lot of people with MS get double vision and trouble with incontinence and stuff, and those two things didn't affect me, but I basically had pins and needles over 100% of my body 100% of the day, and like pins and needles in my lungs, pins and needles just everywhere, because it was like all my nerves were just alive. And it took so long for them to diagnose me. Like the first 6 GPs just said I had stress. I just had stress and I had to relax. And I said, mate, the only thing I've got stress about is you bastards telling me I've got stress, you know? So once I got the diagnosis, I went I became a day patient, and for 3 days I got like massive doses of intravenous steroids. Yeah. And like I hadn't been eating. I'd lost so much weight. because I couldn't eat. I was stressed because I knew there was something wrong with me, and I dropped down to about 80 kilos, and then I went on these steroids, and I kid you not, mate, like, holy heck, if you want to put on weight, take a massive dose of intravenous steroids, because in about 4 weeks, I'd gone up to 110 kilos, and I was just a fat bastard, eh? But my mum would come down to Wellington and cook me a week's worth of meals. I'd eat it in a day. I was having 7 meals a day. I was ravenous because the steroids just kills everything inside your stomach that takes the nutrients out of your food. So you have a meal, your body doesn't get any nutrients, so you're still hungry, so you just keep eating. Yeah. I was fat, eh? It was interesting. But then I really went on to the natural health side of things, and I got in touch with a woman in Auckland. She's actually a pharmacist, but she's into natural health and alternative ways. And I was just chucking like evening primrose oil, vitamin E, salmon oil, vitamin B, various amino acids. I was spending a fortune, but I hammered my body with natural defense. Yeah. And touch wood, I've never had another MS attack since. So about 15% of people with MS, it's called are benign. So you have one attack and don't have another one. Yeah. So I'm lucky that I'm one of the 15%. Most people, they'll have an attack like every 7 years, then every 6 years, then every 5 years, and it gets closer and closer as you get older and older, and you end up being, wheelchairs, immobilized, it affects your speech, and all that. So you still have your marbles, but you wouldn't think so by looking from the outside. So yeah, I did a bit of fundraising and stuff, and I used to go and speak at the newly diagnosed sessions for new MS patients and try and help them and give them some hope and all that sort of stuff. So that was a hell of a chapter.
Geez, your body's been through the ringer.
Yeah, it got hammered, eh?
Yeah, and you're also a cancer survivor too, aren't you? So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, that was probably about 5 or 6 years after that, and and I didn't have any pain or anything, so I got testicular cancer, and you don't really know. I was feeling a little bit off, not sick or anything, just felt like I was about 95% all the time. Yeah. And then my girlfriend, she just said, one of your plums is twice the size of the other one. And I said, oh yeah, that's you, baby. And she said, you better go and get it checked out. And I went, oh, it doesn't hurt. I don't know, maybe, you'd Google it, and sometimes one's bigger than the other. But I went to the doctor, and he said, oh, I don't think it's anything sinister, but we'll get an ultrasound. So I went and had an ultrasound, and I'm looking up at the screen as the girl's doing the ultrasound. And I just said, shit, that doesn't look good. Yeah. And I said, what does that look like to you? She goes, oh, I can't say. But I could tell by her face there was something wrong. And she says, we'll give the results back to your doctor. And I said, oh, okay. So I thought I had like a hematoma or a cyst or something like that. Yeah. And I got in the car, left the radiology place, and I'd only been in the car 5 minutes, and my GP rang me. He said, mate, no way to sugarcoat this. You got testicular cancer. And I was like, you are fucking joking me, after all this shit. Yeah. And I remember I pulled over. I was halfway back to work, so I was sort of between home and work, and I pulled over and I bawled my eyes out, and it was like, and I didn't sort of know why, and I don't think it was because I had cancer. It was just like another bloody thing, you know. And then I thought, so I just went home. And I thought, oh, this is a waste of time. And so I just went into work and told them. And then I can't exactly remember how it happened, but I had health insurance. So I think within a week, I was in a private hospital, and they basically cut your stomach open, sort of level with your belly button. And then like your testicle, your nut is connected to this tube that goes from your ball bag up to your stomach, and they basically pull it out, and then they snip the tube, tie a knot, and then sew up your stomach. And the most painful part was because they cut through all your abdominal muscles. Every time you move, just the grab of your abdominal muscles, like anyone that's had a hernia operation or something, or a cesarean and stuff like that, they know how, because your abs are locking all the time. And so I went home and got over that sort of operation, and then they test you. And so they said if you're a bloke, testicular cancer, if you're going to get cancer, is the best one because it's so far away from the rest of your organs and stuff. So the risk of it spreading is light because it can only travel through that tube. So they take that whole tube out. So I got blood tested like within days, and they said my marker count was fine. And then I was having a blood test every 2 weeks. And about 6 months after the operation, they said, oh, it's back. The cancer's back. And I'm like, oh, where? And they said, oh, we're not sure, but you know, most marker counts are in a normal person, like everyone's got cancer cells in them.
Yeah.
And there's like cancer marker counts out of 100. So a normal person's, from memory, is about between 4 and 10.
Yeah.
So I'd have my test, and I was like 8, 7, 6, 11, 8, 4, and I was going along like that fortnightly, and I was, that's all right. And I was about to drop back to once every 2 months blood test, and then I got a marker reading of 95.
Oh,
and it had come soaring back. And so I went into work. I went to the specialist, and he said, mate, because we took the tumour out, we know what sort of cancer it is. We're not legally, we're not allowed to say we can cure it, but I'm 99.9% we've got it. We've got a chemo that will fix that. So, and they said, but it does knock the shit out of you, this chemo regime you're going to go through. And I went, righto. So I told work, took 3 months off work, organised, got all my affairs in order. And one of the managers at work that I got on really well with, he was in the cancer ward. And so they had a bed for me next to him, and we could just shoot the shit while we're going through this bloody awful time together. So I go to the hospital with my sister and my father to admit me in. And then the last thing they do before they start you on the chemo is they take your height, your weight, and a blood test to figure out how much chemo you're going to go on. So I took my height, took my weight, got in my hospital pajamas, and then they came in and they said, oh, your blood tests come back normal. And I went, what? And they said, yeah, you're just back to normal. And I said, well, someone's lying, you know. I'd prepared myself to go through hell, and then they're telling me I could go home, and it was normal. I said, test me again. And so they did, and it was normal. Huh? And like my father and my sister were stoked, but I was so pissed off. Like you'd think you'd be happy,
yeah,
but I wasn't. And I was in the hospital. I say, just fucking give it to me anyway, because I was so I was so ready for it. And so I ended up going home. Went back to work the next day, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" So, well, I'm clear again. So for about the next 3 or 4 years, I was having an X-ray every 3 months, and an MRI every 6 months, blood tests every month, and I was just a bloody pincushion. And to this day, that's never come back. So yeah, it was horrendous, mate. It was horrendous. But I think I dealt with the cancer diagnosis better than someone who'd never had anything wrong with them.
Yeah.
Because I'd been through the horrendous car accident, I'd been through the MS thing, and then the cancer one. I was like, oh well, it's just a friggin' another one. Yeah. Didn't make me stronger. It just made me realise you actually can win these things.
Yeah.
It's not and when you get a cancer diagnosis, people think it's a death notice as well. And when I was diagnosed, I since learned that back then it was something like 90% of people that get diagnosed with cancer survive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's really high.
Yeah.
And the number of people because it's sort of embarrassing as a bloke to say testicular cancer, but the number of people that came and said, oh, I've had that, my brother's had that, my father had that, my cousin had that. Cancer's so common. Yeah.
So what was the go with the positive test? Did you ever find out how you had 95%?
No, so like I said it was Professor Dady, who was the foremost oncologist in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I said, how does that happen? I just need to know how that happens. Like, is it human error? Is it, and I don't care what it is. I just need to be able to label what it was.
Yeah,
and he'd been like a professor of oncology for 20 years. And he said, this is only the third time in my career I've seen it happen. And he said, I can't explain it. Like your body, he said, the 95 was correct. And the 4 that we get today is correct. How your body's done that, I don't know. So he said, I'm sorry, I can't explain it.
What an experience for you in terms of your body. You've been through absolute ringers. But anyway, I want to get to sort of your work. Everyone knows you as the face of the TAB, the face of sport in New Zealand. How did you get into that, and where did that all start?
Yeah, so I was, I'd had a few little bits and pieces. Like my first career out of school was actually insurance, and I worked for state insurance. Right. And in my days, when you left school at Palmy Boys, you could like apply to, what was it called? The State Services Commission. And they basically staffed all of the government departments. So I was really good with numbers and I wanted to be an accountant. And so I applied to them and said, I'd like to go to the Inland Revenue, because Inland Revenue put you through university, paid for it, and you could get your chartered accountant's license and all that sort of stuff. So that was sort of the path I wanted. And being from Palmy Boys, I mean, no one went on the dole. Everyone got a job. It wasn't a big deal. You either went to university or you went working. And I didn't want to go to university. I was sick of people standing at the front of the room telling me stuff that I didn't really want to know about. You know, I just wanted to go out and, you know, get a car and car stereo and, you know, that sort of stuff. And so I got down to Inland Revenue. We're going to take two graduates, two school leavers. And so I got down to the last four, and I went to the last interview. But the day before the last interview, I flattered with a hairdresser. And the day before was the Manawatu hairdressing champs. And so I modeled for him. And so I turned up to this interview, bro, with black around the sides, white on the top, and a big red rat's tail.
Was it supposed to be the best hairdressing, the best dues, was it? Or
yeah, it came second at the Manawatu champs. Yeah, it came second. And yeah, so I go to this interview and didn't get the job because of my haircut. And the guy that was doing the employing was a mate of my father's, and he rang Dad and told him why. Dad kicked me up the arse, eh? So I went and got my hair cut and coloured and got a job at State Insurance. Yeah, so I was there for a few years, and then I did some sales repping, and then I worked for income support for a while. But I really wanted to get into the TAB because I love to punt, and I was betting offshore because New Zealand didn't have sports betting at that time. And then New Zealand, the TAB announced they were going to do sports betting. So I wrote to them and said, I want to be a bookmaker, you know, because I kept all my own figures. I had like these books. Yeah. So I had an account at Centrebet and an account at Darwin All Sports. And I used to keep logbooks, so where I'd bet and how much I'd win, and how much I'd lose. And I said to myself, I wouldn't add up the columns till I'd been going a year, because I didn't want to influence how I was betting. So at the end of the year, at Centrebet, I'd lost $800, and on Darwin All Sports, I'd made about $1,400. Oh, yeah. So I cancelled my Centrebet account, thinking it was their fault, and kept the Darwin one. And I loved it, mate. I just loved it. I loved the challenge, and I wasn't betting big, but I was betting often. Yeah. Because to me, it was like, not the size of the win, but getting a win, you know, even if it was a $10 bet on something that I'd figured out that they'd had wrong. So I was always looking for, not necessarily mistakes, but I was hunting value bets, and I'd find one, you know. So I didn't get a job at the TAB. And then as sports betting expanded, I kept applying, and I never got the job. And I found out they were employing from within. So I applied for other jobs at the TAB just so I could get in, and I got one of those, sort of a little bit fraudulently. They said, have you done QA before? And I said, yeah, done that. It's awesome. I didn't even know what it was. So I got a job as a QA tester at the TAB. And after 3 months, they said, oh, well, you're a really good rooster, but you don't know what you're doing. So they moved me somewhere else.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And then I suppose I'd been there about a year and a half, and then I joined the sports betting team and as a junior bookmaker, and sort of did a couple of years as a junior and learning my craft. And then I became, so you have a junior bookmaker, a bookmaker, and a senior bookmaker. So then I was a bookmaker for a while, and then about the same time as I became a senior bookmaker was when part of my job was I used to fax the odds to Sky to put on a graphic before games.
Really?
And the producer rang me one day and said, "Oh, thanks for sending through the faxes. Do you want to come down to the stadium and do it on screen?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Like, talk on camera, just give the odds on camera." And I said, "I've never done that before." She goes, "Oh, you'll be fine."
Yeah.
So I said to my boss, "They want me to do it on TV." And they said, "Oh, really? Oh, well, if you want to, you can." So I said, "Okay." So I did one game. I did Hurricanes Crusaders at Westpac Stadium. And afterwards, she came up to me. She goes, "That was awesome. Do you want to come up to Auckland and do it next week on Friday?" And I went, "Oh." And that's sort of where it started. I just started doing Friday night Super Rugby games, and then it became Friday, Saturday, and then it became All Blacks, and then we just started doing NPC, and then cricket, boxing, netball, the whole lot. It was awesome.
So you'd never done any media before. This was just all jumping in and just seeing how it went.
Yeah.
And it went wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and because I did that rugby one, so I did the one on rugby, and everyone said, "Oh, that was really good. We should put you on trackside and talk about sports odds and stuff." So I started doing trackside sports stuff, and then as I got to know a few of the boys, I had a sports show on trackside for a while, and I got Snakey into the trackside studio one day, and Scooter and Floss, and I remember taking TJ Perenara in there, and TJ's pretty staunch, sort of relaxed dude. And we walked in, and he walked into the master control room, which is just a sea of screens and dials and digits and sliders and all that. And he walked in, and his face, he just went, "Wow!" He was so amped. And the people thought it was awesome that TJ thought that their job was awesome. And they said, "Oh, do you want to have a go?" And he's going, "Yeah." So he starts vision switching live trackside pictures and fading in and out stuff. And he said, "When I'm done with rugby, I want to do this job." Yeah, so I did a bit of TV and stuff with trackside, and then trackside radio started, and I did a show with Nisbo for a long time on radio. And and I did a lot of stuff with TVNZ and News TV3 and News Talk ZB. Whenever they wanted a TAB angle or a Melbourne Cup angle and stuff like that, they just rang me. I still get phone calls today.
Oh, yeah. Popular man. And talk me through the process of setting the odds as a senior bookmaker. I know a lot of punters listen to this show, so they'd be interested to know how the whole process works.
Well, very different now to how it was. I loved how it was. It was very personal. You took it very personally if your book lost money, and that's the way it should be. You should treat it like your own money, because when I became a bookmaker, I pretty much stopped betting because I was getting the thrill by being on the other side. So I was actually betting against the punter and trying to massage the market. So it's old school, but if you're punter out there, I'd still do the way I did it. So basically, if you take Super Rugby, for example, I'd get the Hurricanes squad when it's named, and then I'd pick my starting 15 and my bench, and then every player I'd mark out of 10. So for like the Hurricanes, I'd have Geordie Barrett, 10 out of 10. Your wings, let's say Ben Lamb, I'd probably go 8 out of 10. Julian Savia, 8 or 9 out of 10. And you'd work your way through. And so all the players would be out of 10. Then I'd have the bench out of 20 as a collective. Yeah. I'd have the kicker out of 10. And then I'd have the coaching staff strength out of 10. Yeah. And then you add all of that up and you get a number. So let's say it's 180. And then I'd do the same for the Highlanders. And then you'd go through all of that, mark all of them. Marty Banks a 10. But you go through all of that, and they might come out at 171 versus 180. So my starting point is the Hurricanes win by 9 points. Now that sounds crazy, but that was my power ratings. I needed a starting point. Yeah. So I had a starting point of 9, and then you'd say, okay, and then I'd have a whole lot of stats. I had in a spreadsheet every single Super Rugby result from 1996 to 2006. Wow. I'd have the weather conditions, what the score was at halftime, what the first scoring player was, who the referee was. I'd have everything. Yeah. And everything all had a different weighting. And then home ground advantage, how strong you are away from home. So like the Brumbies back then had an amazing home ground advantage. The Crusaders had an amazing home ground advantage. Hurricanes not so much, but the Hurricanes Crusaders games, for whatever reason, always take the Hurricanes in the point start. For some reason, they get up for Christchurch games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know. And I always remember, there's a quote that Jerry Collins gave me. I asked him one day, I said, why do you guys play so well against the Crusaders? And he said, in a very non-racist way, he said, they don't like brown man rugby. And which to me was like, in their face, late tackles, high shots, just rack them up. Yeah. And so the Wellington teams always went really well, better than they should. And I'm not saying they won more, but they went better than they should against Christchurch teams. And Auckland teams always did well against Wellington teams, whether it was the Blues or Auckland. And it was one of the things I tore my hair out trying to figure out why that was. But Auckland seemed to get up for Wellington, and Wellington seemed to get up for Christchurch. It was a really interesting thing. But if you're a punter and you want to make some money, keep some stats. Like I always get asked, what's a good tip? What's a good tip? It's like, do your own work, get your own stats. Like when Paul Honus was refereeing, 3 out of 5 games, the first stoppage in play was a penalty.
Yeah.
Well, he liked to stamp his mark on the game. Now, it was a penalisable offence, but some referees might just like to let that go. But he liked to be, I'm here, I'm the boss, penalty, Yeah. And so always take first stoppage in play in Paul Honus games as a penalty, and also take penalty tries. He loved a penalty try, Paul Honus. Yeah. Loved one.
So at the end of the day, you were basically just choosing the numbers. You were putting the odds out and then just waiting for the punters to adjust them or move them at all.
Yeah, so I'd come up with my prices, and then we'd have in the old days, it changed a bit. We didn't do this for long, but we'd get all of the bookmakers in, and I'd have my prices, and I'd have the whiteboard, and I'd say, without telling them my prices, I'd just go around the room, because you want a lay of the land, and you want, what are the public expecting the price to be?
Yeah.
And so they'd all give their prices, we'd debate it, and I'd settle on my final price. I wouldn't often move from mine, but occasionally you would. But if you're a punter out there, Jimmy, and you're thinking, I'm going to take the Chiefs this weekend, I reckon they'll be, $1.80, I'll take them. And then I put them out at $2.20, you're all over it. So as a bookmaker, you're thinking, well, they take them at $1.80. Why sell them at $2.20 if they'll be sold at $1.80? And so the last thing I do before I put the prices in was, I've got to be happy. As soon as I push betting open, I've got to be prepared to take a $10,000 bet on either side. So, All Blacks South Africa, it's $1.20, $4.20. If the first bet in is 10,000 on South Africa, we're going to lose 42 grand. Am I happy to take that?
Yeah.
And if I'm not, I make a final little tweak and then open it. And then you put the seatbelt on and watch it come. It's awesome.
Yeah, and obviously, you would have got a few wrong in your time. I remember one time in particular, I think I'd marked Taranaki at about $3 to win the comp. You opened them at 30. The complete outsiders. I couldn't believe it. If I could have punted, I would have jumped all over that one. But talk me through that big stuff up.
Yeah, I didn't do that one. Yeah, like it's really hard. Like you'll get, for example, let's use Manawatu, for example. They've just signed a pretty big name. It hasn't been made public yet, and I've only found out sort of secondhand, but I know it's happened. So if we don't know that, and we put the markets out now, and then all of a sudden you hear they've signed this player, and this player, and you've put them as rank outsiders, and that's quite often what happens, especially with Mitre 10. There's a lot of undisclosed, and it's not intentionally undisclosed form, but signings and stuff like that, So you put a price out of $30 on Taranaki, and people start punting it, and then 3 days later you found out that Beauden Barrett's been released and he's playing the season for Taranaki. Well, of course it's wrong. Yeah. So it's information is key, eh?
But even in the final that year, not often you'd have the away team as outsiders in a final, but that week you did. You had Tasman favourites for the ITM Cup final. Talk me through that one. That was definitely you, because I remember talking to you before the game.
Yeah, that was me. I believed, Tasman and the Oracle. What can you? They were just on a roll. There's something about Tasman, and the thing I like about Tasman is every province has got history. but Tasman hasn't.
Yeah.
They're developing a history, and they embrace that. They are making their history now, and I got wrapped up in that a bit. I got a bit emotionally invested in Tasman. I love what they do. I love their fans. I love the area and their stadium, and that might have swung me a little bit their way. Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Tasman can't beat Tasman, to be fair. And talk to me about this staff specials. I know a lot of people probably hit you up about them. I think most people think it's a tip from you, but you work for the TAB. Surely you don't want these staff specials to be winning too often.
Yeah, no, not well. You do want them to win. You don't want to go. I think the worst was about 6 weeks in a row it didn't come in. So it's marketing, but we tried to find something topical. So you'd have the Barrett brothers versus the Ioane brothers, most points or most tries, or something like that. Or if I don't know, if James Marshall got I remember one actually, Geordie Barrett got an amazing kick from beyond halfway to win a game.
Yeah.
So the next game, the staff special was Geordie Barrett to get a penalty over 50 metres because it's topical.
Yeah.
So we work out what the actual price is, like $2.75, and we go, oh, we'll make it $4. So the special, every staff special was value. It was above the percentage of it happening. So people would say, we'd do the odd special at $12. Its true price might have been $8. So an $8 event is a 12% chance of happening, so the true price is $8. It's still only a 12% chance of happening, but we're going to give you $12 instead of $8.
Yeah.
So yeah, they say, oh, your specials are shit, they don't come in. And I'm like, I'm not saying they'll come in, but they are value. But if you took it every single time, you will end up ahead of the game.
Yeah, so if you're watching the game, are you wanting the staff special to come in or not?
Yeah, I do, because it's got my name on it. So, and you can go and have a beer after the game rather than go and hide in your hotel room, because you'll get shouted a few beers if it comes in. But the funny thing was, when it came in, I was a mug, and if it didn't come in, I was an arsehole. So,
but you obviously, once you opened your market, you never wanted that market to lose.
No, it's funny. You can't win all the time. Like betting is a bit of on the bookmaker side, it's a churn, right? So you don't want to, if you turn over $1 million in a weekend, we would hope to make 150,000 profit. And if we make a 450,000 profit, that's a great weekend. But if you make 450 the next weekend and then 450 the next weekend, the punters aren't having fun in the game.
Yeah.
So you don't mind the odd loss. Like, probably the best example was when David Tua fought Lennox Lewis. That's probably still the highlight of my whole bookmaking career, because that did about 10 times what an All Black test did in turnover. And we had quite an old computer system then. And I was just sitting there watching the numbers, just going ching, 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 ching. And the liability on David Tua just going out the door.
Yeah. And
we'd laid off a lot of our liability offshore. We'd put about $250,000 offshore on David Tua, and we were getting $6 on him offshore, and he was $2.75 in New Zealand. But we were still losing nearly $1 million if David Tua had won.
Wow. But
in the end, we were actually happy to cop that $1 million loss, because there were so many first-time bettors having a bet in that. And so their first ever bet being a winner, and then they go back to the TAB to cash in their ticket, it's a good feeling experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we made a lot of money off that fight. But if we had lost a lot, we would have made a lot of new customers and that sort of thing.
So did you ever have to do that often, go offshore to sort of cover your bets?
We used to a bit, actually, and it was quite a common practice back in the day. But we actually realised after a few years, we never made withdrawals from those bookmaking accounts.
Yeah.
So, and we sat down and we did a feasibility test over about 5 years, and we got all of our transactions, and we found that if we'd never laid off, we would have been better off. So we stopped, and pretty much everyone in the world stopped laying off. You'd only do it you do it very rarely if it was like a huge liability, but it swings and roundabouts.
True. And talk to me about a young childhood hero of mine, Steel Balls. I don't know if you obviously remember him. He would have been he would have sent the shivers up you a few times. But any good stories about him?
Yeah, interesting, eh? Interesting character. Like most punters that have a decent win don't want to be publicised. They don't want people to know their big wins, big losses, or anything.
Yeah.
And back in those days, on the Sunday news, I think it was, on the back page, we had the top 10 bets of the week. Yeah. Winners or losers, just the biggest punts. And Steel Balls was on the back of that each week. And he made his name and made his money off the 5 All Black losses in a row when Tane Randall was captain. And I think his first bet was something like 20,000 on the All Blacks to lose.
What were they paying?
And he, maybe $3.
Oh, yeah.
So he got 60, and then he put the 60 on, and they lost. And then he put the 120 on, and they lost. And then he put the 200 on, and they lost. So yeah. And then he bought an amazing racehorse with Lyle Creek with the money, and he was a character, man. And he went on the speaking circuit talking about his punting and all that. And he's actually a good fella.
Yeah.
But just professionally, we couldn't sort of associate with him. You couldn't go and have a few beers with him because it'd just look weird, you know. It'd be like me going and having a beer with Bryce Lawrence, you know, while he was refereeing. It'd just look a bit sus, you know.
Yeah. True. Big Steel Balls. Is he still punt? Doesn't punt anymore. Did he lose it all?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. I know he was selling cars in Wellington for a while, but yeah, but he bought a nice house and he did all right. But I actually, he certainly didn't bet to the degree that he did back in his heyday.
Yeah, so now the biggest punters are probably the whole Boys Get Paid group now, are they? Are they the ones?
Boys Get Paid, love it. Mate, if I like, there's a privacy issue that I can't tell you actual details, but if you knew what the biggest punters did, make your eyes water. But like the top 10 punters of the TAB, and I'm not talking now, but when I was up to here in it, 9 of them were offshore.
Oh, real?
Yeah.
So how do they not get a restricted account? They're obviously losing quite a bit because I know restricted accounts are becoming more and more common for successful punters or punters who, I guess, punt a bit smarter. What's the go there? How do these guys get such big figures down?
So if you have someone, so I'll use my example. Like I'm a massive Tour de France fan. I love the Tour de France and I do all my stats, I do all my study. And I opened an account at Bet365 and I had a bet on like stage 4 or 5, the first time they went in the mountains. And I put £20 on a guy and he won at 12s. Yeah. So that was £240. So I was quite happy with that. And then the next night I put £50 on a guy and he won. He was only paying 6. So I won £300 and I got an email from them saying account closed. Not even restricted, closed. Yeah. 2 bets.
3 bets. I knew be the worst though, haven't they?
I knew too much. Yeah, but like the TAB, it's an interesting thing. Like the TAB do have that right. So if you've got a business and you've got a customer that is costing you money, do you want them as a customer? Are they a valuable customer? And people get all testosterone about it, saying, "Oh, you got no balls, you got no this, you got no that." Yeah. But it's like the supermarket sell bottles of Coke for $1, limit 6. Otherwise, you'd go and empty the shelves and sell them to, you know, the dairy owners can only go and buy 6. So we still want people to have fun, but, you know, stables know stuff. You know, Sean Maitland rings you and says, "Mate, the Scotland team have got chicken pox. We're putting out a B team. Get on." So you charge in and you take Italy because they're going to be playing Scotland B. Yeah. Italy are paying $8. You put 10 grand on, we're 80 grand in the hole. You got the information we haven't. Yeah. So it's a bit of a protection thing, but bottom line is it's a company and it's got to make money. So restricting people isn't the first go-to, but it probably is a necessary tool.
Fair enough. And the other thing you sort of touched on there was fixing, I guess, or a little bit of insight. How much do you think goes on in sport? How much are you guys aware of? What are your precautions around that? You've got a
whole new podcast, Jim. Whole new podcast. I'm really passionate about this, Like, I'll try and give you a Reader's Digest version. I went to a conference in Fiji, which sounds glamorous. I was there for 2 days. It never stopped raining, like proper raining, the whole time. But FIFA and Interpol put on a conference for keeping our game clean or something like that. And it wasn't long after the cricket was in the spotlight for it all. And I went over there, and it was put on by Oceania Football. So there was a table from New Zealand. So there was me and another guy from work. There were about 3 cops, couple of government employees, a sports lawyer, referees, bosses, all that. So there was our table of 10. And then Tonga had a table, Cook Islands, Samoa, Papua New Guinea. So all of Australasia were in there. And the head of Interpol was there, and they told us about match fixing over in Europe and stuff, and told us real life stories. And I'm like, holy shit, this is unreal, like what is happening over there. And I'd been privy to a bit of stuff, just, you know, and I can't really talk, but there's stuff I know that's gone on, and I'm probably the only person in New Zealand that knows it. Yeah. And I've chosen to keep it that way. But I met with a guy, Declan Hill, and he wrote a book called The Fix. And read the book. Holy heck. It's if you're into sport and sports betting, read The Fix by Declan Hill. Righto. Sport New Zealand brought Declan Hill out to New Zealand to address all these CEOs and chairs of all the sports organisations. And I went along to listen to him because I'd read his book. And only 4 sports came along because New Zealand don't see it as a threat. And so then I said to Declan, can I grab a cup of coffee with you after your presentation, just for 10 minutes? And he said, yeah. So we went across to the Intercontinental House Bar and had a coffee. And I sat there for an hour with him, telling him what I'd seen. And he said I was the first guy he'd ever met that understood both sides of match fixing equation. Yeah. So like the bookmaker side and then the punter side. And so it was nice to meet him and that sort of thing. And then he rang me that night and he said, I want to see you again. And before I go back to the UK. He's like a professor. So I flew back to Wellington and I had a day with him. Oh man, it was friggin' mind-blowing. Like what he told me in confidence was just unbelievable. Like, I guess I can tell you that, like the biggest crime in the world now, like the drug smugglers, the weapons traders and all of that, the big players will chuck that in for match fixing. And like one story I'll tell you. Yeah, go on. Here we go. So there was the Malaysian national football team. Yeah. Approached the LA Galaxy football team for a friendly as a warm up for the Asian Cup, and they sent them a letter and contacted LA Galaxy and said, look, we'll pay for the hireage of the stadium in LA. We'll pay your players a fee, and we'll have this game and to help us warm up, blah, blah, blah. And these are the dates we can do it. And then they said, you come and see us. So the president flew over and went and saw them, and they signed the deal and it was all done. And then about 2 months later, the Malaysian team went over, played LA Galaxy. LA Galaxy won 4-1. And then Malaysia went back. It then came out that it wasn't the Malaysian national football team. It was just a match fixer guy who'd made up a letterhead and had a bunch of players on the tape, and they put copy Malaysian national jerseys on them, took this team to LA and said there needs to be 5 goals in this game. They punted it on the black market to be 5 or more goals, and it more than covered all the expenses and everything, and he made millions.
Wow, that is crazy.
It's awesome, eh?
There obviously can't be too much of that going on. Not too many teams would be that clueless, would they?
Oh, look, it's amazing. There's a very famous cricketer who was they were touring England, an international cricketer, and him and his manager were in the house bar, and this guy came up to them and said, I'm so-and-so from think it was Adidas or Puma, I can't remember, one of those brands, gave him the card, and he was the marketing manager for India for this brand.
Yeah.
And this team were, after England, were going to go and tour India, and they said, we just want you to put a sticker on your bat and wear our clothes and stuff like that, just for the Indian tour, and we'll give you like 20 grand a test or whatever, a nominal amount, and blah, blah. And so they had a talk, and they said, yeah, okay. So they signed the deal. So when we go to India, you contact us, blah, blah, blah. And they said, so they went out for dinner and a drink to celebrate. And then the player and his manager were in the hotel, and the Indian Adidas rep said, I've got to get going. He says, I've left a gift for you in your room. So the player went up to his room, and there was a bag of money on his bed and a Russian hooker. And what they did, and thankfully the player didn't avail himself of the Russian hooker, went and reported it to the team manager. And so it was a fake Indian Adidas rep with a fake business card, and they'd put hidden cameras into his room. And so they were going to capture him having sex with this woman and then blackmail him when he got to India with the tapes they had of him, because he was a married man. So it's way more than just fixing sports events. It's now blackmail, and so it's called the honey trap, and a few cricketers have been caught by the honey trap.
Either way,
one in particular who was at the top of his game got caught in the honey trap and retired young with a chronic knee injury that would never allow him to play again. Knee injury. Never played again.
Wow. Cricket.
That's just the tip of the iceberg of my fixing stories, bro.
Jeez. Obviously, cricket's an easier sport to fix than most, so cricket would be a huge target for those guys. Do you think it's ever going to get into rugby, or do you think it's got into rugby?
I don't think it's in rugby. But I'll give you an example of, I mean, years and years ago, I got a phone call, an anonymous phone call from someone, and said, hey, I'm just letting you know that in the game on Saturday, Errol Brain's going to score the first try. The team's going to set it up for Errol Brain to score the first try for Counties.
Yeah.
And it was a Ramfurly Shield game against, and I still can't remember whether it was East Coast or Poverty Bay. It was a low third division team or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, oh yeah, whatever. And I didn't even know what match fixing was. That's how long ago it was. And so instead of opening up like the number 8 in a one-sided game might sort of be $16, $18 first try scorer. So I opened it at 15. As soon as I opened, money started coming on, and I went to 12, and then I went to 10. He ended up paying less than the wings. He was like $5 or $6 with a decent liability. But back then, a decent liability was only $5,000 on a shitty game like that.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, this is weird. How does everyone know this? And then the game kicked off, and Counties were all over them. And then the wing made a break for Counties, and he had about a 60-metre unchallenged run to the sideline, to the try line. And he was about 15 metres clear of anyone, and he got 5 metres short of the line, and you saw him think, and he just went to ground, just dropped. It's, you know how you do in training, you just set up the fake ball, and he just dropped and placed the ball, and everybody comes careering in, and then they trapped the ball in the bottom, 5 metre scrum. And I went, oh, you are kidding. It's going to be a pushover try. This is what their plan was. So they have the scrum, and it collapsed. And then they have another scrum, and it collapsed, and the ref gave a penalty try. So
they all lost.
Yeah, they all lost. And I never told anyone because I was fear packing myself. But it was just
they should have done that.
But they were just putting like $10 or $20 on each for a piss trip. So it wasn't like a big organised illegal stinger. It was quite innocent. You know, I've seen a couple of games in New Zealand. Again, not recently, a long time ago, first scoring play, drop goal, and teams taking drop goals in the first minute, and you're just going, oh, okay. Yeah. But the one...
Andy, at the Bulldog, were you involved with that at all?
Yeah, I was. I was, actually. That was Bulldogs against North Queensland,
Exactly.
and we were starting to get money on first scoring play being a North Queensland penalty.
Yeah.
And anyone that watches any rugby league they only take a penalty when time's up on the clock, pretty much, or when it's real close. And first scoring play hardly ever happens. And then when a bet comes in that goes through a certain threshold, it's intercepted onto our computer, so it's not automatically accepted. And it came up, and someone wanted $5,000 on first scoring play being a North Queensland penalty, and was paying $10. So it's a 50 grand loser.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't normally hold $5,000 on the whole book, let alone one bet.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they've made a mistake on the bet slip. So I just went, they've probably ticked the times thousands. So I gave them $50.
Yeah.
And it cancelled. And then 5,000 came on. And I said, oh, this is weird. So I rang the agency while the bet was on my screen and just said, do they really want $5,000 on first score? Do they know what they're doing? And then he said, I'll just ask her. And I went, her? So it's not a sexist thing, but very rarely do you get a woman wanting a $5,000 bet first scoring play on a rugby league game. And I just said, oh, no, look, she can't have it. She can have $100. And then so didn't take it. So I suspended the book. And then I rang a mate of mine that works for a bookmaker in Australia.
Yeah.
And I said, Davey, are you getting any action on the first scoring play? Penalty to the Cowboys? And he said, yeah, just now. And I said, so are we. And he said, shit. So we're all the bookmakers are in this network. So that option in that selection in that option was suspended right through Australasia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we ended up just closing the book, and people were saying they wanted to have a bet on it. And we just said, oh, technical difficulties, we can't do anything about it. And we've got cameras in all the TABs and pub tabs, and I got a look at the person that was putting on it. It was I don't know, she would have been in her 20s, had a pram with a baby in it, and it just didn't stack up, you know. So then I watched the game, and I watched the game, and it was like 3 or 4 minutes in. Cowboys on attack in front of their post. Ryan Tandy makes a tackle and just lies on the guy. Yeah. You know, he's going, get up, get up, get up. And he's lying.
Blow it.
And then got up, and he blew it right in front. And I'm like, oh, my God. And Jonathan Thurston saw there was a massive overlap out to the left, so tapped it and double skip past, try in the corner. So bloody idiots tried to go through with it. So they must have known that we were onto them, but they still tried to do it.
Do you know how much money they managed to get on? Obviously, they didn't get any from you guys, but what about around the world? Do you know?
Not much at all. Like, I think, when I say not much, I think about 50,000 in collects, but they didn't collect that because it was so bloody obvious.
And it wasn't a winner.
Yeah. And the next day I got a call from New South Wales Police. So they'd rung the bookmakers and they said, oh, this is the guy that found it. And so they rung me and they were going to fly a guy over to talk to me. I said, mate, I haven't got much to say. You know, this is what happened and we can give you the footage. And it turned out that the woman was the sister of either Tandy's flatmate or Tandy's agent's flatmate or something like that. But yeah, they went to jail and got convicted, and Ryan Tandy ended up with the wrong crowd, and he either overdosed or killed himself. Yeah. So it was an absolute shocker.
Crazy, mate. So many stories in that scene, behind the scenes. It's crazy.
Yeah. You're
definitely going to have to write a book one day.
Oh, mate, I would love to write a book, but I've had 3 people ask me to do a book, and I said I couldn't tell you everything, you know, and they said, oh, we won't say who it's by, and I said, there's only one person that can tell you the stories I can tell you, and it's going to be obviously me. I said, unless you can pay me $1 million and give me a new identity, and I'll go and live in the jungle in Thailand or something. But yeah, I'd love to do it, eh?
Oh, yeah. Geez, that would be a good read. But anyway, we could talk about match fixing and gambling for years on this.
You love it.
I love it. Jeez, I love it, fun. I was so gutted. We'll get to this, but 2020 obviously got made redundant from the TAB. I was so gutted, not only for you, but I also wanted to jump into that scene as well and come join you. Sitting next to you in Wellington in the offices making those odds. But we will talk about the 2020. I know it was a horrible year for you. Pretty much everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and a real tough year for you mentally. How did you handle it? And talk me through the year.
Yeah, it was a tough old year. Like, I mean, no one predicted the COVID thing. And when it sort of started rearing its head in sort of February, March, and we were just going, oh, there's something happening overseas. And then it all happened quite quick. And we sort of went into lockdown. And I think it was late March, wasn't it? We went into lockdown, and pretty much all sporting events around the world just stopped. Horse racing here stopped. Aussie horse racing was about the only thing that kept going. We were doing betting on Ukrainian underwater tonsil hockey and all sorts of random things. And everyone was just stuck at home. No one was going into the office. And, I just lived by myself, and I started going a bit crazy. The first week was great, just sitting at home, and we were doing Zoom meetings with the work fellas, and we were having fun with, as I say, Uzbekistan table tennis and volleyball from random places. And and then we'd been I think we locked down for 5 weeks, didn't we? Yeah. And then in the 4th week, we were having Zoom meetings with our CEO, and he was doing the best he could, but no one had any answers. No one knew how long it was going to take. But the TAB was just bleeding money, same as a number of businesses. The costs don't stop, but the income did. And so we're a high income, high expense company. And when the high income stops and the high expenses don't, you're just bleeding money every week.
Yeah.
And I remember on a Tuesday we had a Zoom with the CEO, and you could send in questions, and there's redundancies on the cards because it was starting to be talked about around New Zealand. No, we're not thinking about that yet. And then on Thursday or Friday, we were told, yep, there's going to be some redundancies. There's going to be a restructure. You'll all be contacted by your managers. And then I got a phone call on the Monday morning and saying, you've been disestablished. And I'm like, holy shit. Excuse me. And they disestablished, I think it was something like 220 out of 600 staff. So a third, just over a third.
Yeah.
No warning, just happened, bang, like that. Right. And that sort of rocks me. And I was numb for like a day. I just didn't quite know how to process that, because the country's in lockdown, you've just lost your job. And then you have to have a negotiation process and blah, blah, blah. So you stay on for about another 3 weeks, but no one could do anything, and you knew you were going. And it was horrible. It was about 3 weeks later, and I think we'd gone into level 3, so people could go out again. And I had to go back to work, take my laptop, my phone, my car, my security pass, and I felt like I was just giving my life away, Yeah. And then I just I hired a car for a week, and then came home and thought, now what do I do? I'd sort of lost my identity in a way in that. And my phone, I didn't tell everyone straight away. I just didn't feel the need to tell everyone. I told my family and a couple of mates, and then it was starting to filter out that I'd lost my job, and I'd started painting during lockdown as well. And I was doing a particular painting, and my phone was going ding. Oh, mate, I heard you lost your job. I'm sorry if there's anything I can do. I went, oh, thanks, mate, blah, blah, blah. Get back to painting. Ding. Oh, sorry to hear about your redundancy. So, and I think someone had put on Facebook, can't believe TAB let Staff go, or something like that. So I did a Facebook post, and I don't do videos of myself and all that, but I thought this will just stop my phone dinging so I can finish my painting. So I did a video, and I was just basically saying, yeah, I've lost my job. Cheers. See ya. And then just at the end of the video, I just said, actually, if you've got a friend or a family member who's been made redundant and is going through what I'm going through, here's some tips you can do for them, because this is what I need. Yeah. And so maybe that's what they need. So I did the video and sent it out. and then carried on painting. And my phone just kept dinging, and I thought, oh, they'll see the message. And about 20 minutes later, came back, and there's like 150 messages, like private messages off that Facebook post from complete strangers, saying, thank you so much for that. My brother lost his job. I didn't know what to do. And all I said to them was, you don't have to give them answers. You just have to listen. Just have 2 ears and just listen and just sit next to them. Don't try and fix their life. Because in their mind, their life's fucked. So just let them think that for a while and just be there for them. And I remember, like, the great man, Ross Filippo.
One of the great.
So one of the great. In fact, I'll get to that shortly. So not long after I was made redundant, my sister had been having chemo, and she was in hospital during lockdown, not doing well. Again, a long story short, they said she was terminal, and they said you can either stay in hospital, you can go to hospice, or you can go home. And she said, I just want to go home. She'd been in hospital for 4 months, so they stopped all of her drugs. She had 3 really good days at home, and then 3 terrible days at home, and then passed away. And so I lost my job, and then I lost my sister. There was no funeral. We couldn't go there. Her husband couldn't get back. And then the next week, my older sister was diagnosed with cancer, with bowel cancer. Right. And I was just like, holy shit. And I was dealing with them one at a time. So I was made redundant. I was devastated. Then my sister died. I didn't care about being made redundant. And then my sister died. And then my older sister got diagnosed. And then I was more worried about her and worried about my mum and dad. And then Ross Filippo rang me. And it was about 9 o'clock at night. And I was sitting on my back step. And it was the first time I addressed it all collectively. Like, it had all actually happened. Not one thing had happened and one thing. And it was all collectively. No, I was a blubbering idiot for 20 minutes. I couldn't talk for 20 minutes. And he just sat there. Every minute or so, he'd just say, I'm here, bro. That's it. I'm still here. 20 minutes of silence just with a mate on the end of the phone, you know, and I didn't feel better afterwards, but I needed that outlet, and that to me illustrated that you just need someone to be. You don't need them to fix you, or that you don't need answers. You just need to share the air with someone, sort of thing. And then it was just like, shit, you know. Oh, and then just before my sister died, and actually just after I saw you in Wellington, I was doing my redundancy road trip. My best mate died in Invercargill. He was diagnosed motor neuron disease in February, and you usually live 2 to 4 years or something. He lasted 3 or 4 months. He got pneumonia and just didn't have the lung strength and passed away. So I was driving down to see him, and I'd got as far as Queenstown. I'd spent the night before with Ben Herring, one of the great nights in Wanaka, and he'd be a good potty, mate. Get jamming on. And then I'd got to Queenstown. I rang his wife, and she said, oh, he's not very good. And I said, I'll come down now if you like. And she said, oh, no, he'll be okay. I'm just going to ring the nurse, see if there's anything more I can do for him. And then she texted me 10 minutes later, said he just died. So I just jumped straight in the car and drove to Invercargill. And so I had a week of that. And at the end of that week, and then I was going to work my way back up the country, visiting friends and family that I'd lost touch with and all that. I was really looking forward to it. But after the funeral on the Saturday, I woke up on the Sunday, and I was going to spend a few days in Invercargill with his wife and daughter, but I had nothing. I was done. I was absolutely done. And I got in the car. The weirdest thing, I drove to Christchurch. I was going to stop in Dunedin for a couple of days, but I didn't. I drove to Christchurch, pulled into the motel, walked into my room, and I didn't remember one thing of the drive. You know, and that's a 6-7 hour drive. I didn't remember any of the cities. I didn't remember anything at all.
Yeah. And
I arrived, and I actually messaged Brad Moore, the now assistant All Black coach, who's one of the great men. And I said, are you around? And he said, yep. Are you in town? And I said, yep. And he said, meet me here at 10 o'clock. So we went to this cafe at 10 o'clock, and I didn't tell him what had been going on with me for a while. He knew I'd lost my job. We just sort of talked about that. And he's just such a good man, such a good, positive man. And then I tried to catch up with Tim Bateman down there as well, but he was busy at work and stuff. And he's another good. And I learned that I just needed to be with good people.
Yeah.
And it's people in my position, and I felt it for a while. You feel like you're burdening someone when you go to them and say, "Mate, I'm having problems." And I thought, what gives me the right to burden someone with all these deaths and job losses and stuff? But when I started my trip, I caught up with a friend in Rotorua, someone else in Hawke's Bay, caught up with Shannon Paku, caught up with you in Wellington, and just sitting down having a coffee with you, that was just good for me.
Yeah.
Just to be with a good person, and then that gave me fuel to go to the next one. And like people say, how did you get through it? I actually don't think I did. I don't think I have.
Yeah.
And you know how everyone says, what doesn't kill you makes stronger, and you climb the mountain, you'll reach the top and all of that. Yeah. Not everyone does.
Yeah.
I've actually failed to deal with it, and I accept that I've failed to deal with it. Yeah. I actually don't think I'll deal with my sister's passing until I'm with her husband. But he's a British national and can't get into New Zealand. He's applied twice on compassionate grounds. He's got her ashes. She wants them on the beach where my parents live, but he can't get into New Zealand. Oh. But it's awesome the Wiggles can. And the West Indies cricket team. And but hey, I'm not going to get all bitter about that. But I don't think I'll properly grieve Fleur until her husband's been here. Yeah. My other sister that was diagnosed with cancer, she's finished her treatment. She's doing really well, which is good. I've got a short-term contract with TVNZ for the America's Cup, so it's amazing, mate. Like before, that would just be a thing. Now it's a win.
Yeah.
So and you've got to view it as a win. Like my hours at TVNZ are long, they're full on, it's hard, but I love it. Yeah. Because I'm part of a team and I'm contributing, and that's what I really, really missed.
Yeah.
And there was no worse feeling waking up on a Monday with no job, no one's ordered a painting, no money in the bank, and you're like, what the fuck am I going to do today? That was hard. That was reality biting. I applied for like 30 jobs. I got 2 letters and 28 nothings. It was it was demoralizing.
Yes, I bet. And you talked about your painting. You're obviously a very gifted painter. Where did that come in? And was that a bit of an outlet for you? I know I've seen a lot of your work and it's impressive. So if any Waterland listeners want to buy some, come message old Staffy. He'll do an absolute treat for you.
Yeah, it's taken off, eh? It's a little bit quiet at the moment. Like work creates work, and so I do a painting, I put it on social media, and it'll make someone go, "Oh, I wonder if he could do that. Wonder if he could do my cat. Wonder if he could do my horse. Yeah. Wonder if he could do my favourite rugby player." And I was taught by my maths teacher at Palmy Boys. He taught me to do one painting because I wanted to buy a painting on his wall, and he said, "No, come back after school, I'll teach you how to do it." So he taught me how to do it, and I did it. Cool. And it was David Bowie, and it was.
Oh, look at that! You did that still.
That's a copy of the one I did at school. So the one I did at school broke a long time ago, and then Bowie died, and my sisters all messaged me and said, "You still got the Bowie painting?" I said, "Nah, it broke years ago." And then that night I was thinking, I wonder if I could do it again. So I bought a canvas and did it again. And I went, oh yeah, that was quite fun. And then I was doing like a painting every 3 or 4 months, not for anyone, just for shits and giggles. And then I did a Michael Jackson one, and I had about 5 people message me on Facebook. I put it on Facebook because I thought, oh, that's come out quite cool, and just put it on Facebook. And 5 people wanted to buy it within half an hour, so I sold it. And then I just started doing the odd one. And then in lockdown, I just started painting just for, not for therapy, for what was going on, but probably more just for a mental holiday, just to stop worrying about shit all the time. Yeah. And it was good. And then, and then I've slowly been painting more and more. And I just painted one the other day of an All Black from 1937, which was a guy's grandfather kicking a goal at the SCG. Sure. And I've got one. I don't know if I'm allowed to show you that one that's on my wall. I've got a nice little contract, Jimmy, with an outfit in Wellington. I'm doing 20 athletes, and oh fuck it, I'll show you. Oh, can you see that?
Oh yeah.
Oops.
Oh, how good's that?
Yeah. So that one's going on a wall in Wellington, and I'm doing about 20 over the next 18 months, and I've had the Auckland Racing Club. I'm talking to them on Monday about doing one live on Auckland Cup Day or Derby Day in front of the stand, which should be a bit of a challenge.
How long does it take you to do one?
Well, that's the thing. Like, that rowing one probably took me 7 or 8 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to be at Ellerslie for 7 or 8 hours painting a bloody horse or whatever it is. So I might have to start it at home and then finish it there or something.
Oh,
so, but it's good. It's good. Yeah, I do enjoy it, and yeah, it's fun.
And what about your podcast, Staff Chat? How's that going? Have you make any plans for that?
I've got Kevin Barry booked for next week.
Have you? Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah, so for an hour podcast, I'll probably need 3 questions. Yeah, I've been trying to get him for like 2 or 3 years, but he lives in Vegas, and he's incredibly busy. But I actually saw him this morning. Went to a sparring session with Joe Parker, and I said, mate, when are we going to do the podcast? And he blamed me. I've been chasing him for years, and he said, you've never given me a time. I said, okay, Tuesday morning. So, yeah, so I'll be recording that next week. Just over the last few months, I found it really hard, not for motivation, but just getting stars to align. You know, I've done a few, but I'd like to do one a fortnight. So once I get another one in the can, mate, I'll be back up and running. But it's interesting, the back catalogue's still getting heaps of downloads, because I try and make them timeless. Yeah, you know.
And you've got some unreal guests that you've had on already, So some of the great guests.
Yeah, and I find like I'm a massive podcast listener, and I quite often find the ones I enjoy the most are the people I haven't heard of.
Yeah.
And like one of my favourite ones of the Staff Chat one was Julian Dean.
Yeah.
Who's he is New Zealand's best ever road cyclist, and his stories about the Tour de France and stuff. Now people don't. It's one of the least downloaded because people go, Julian Dean, haven't heard of him? Scroll.
Yeah.
You know, and then they'll go and listen to Justin Marshall, Andrew Mertens, you know, and the big names, and they're good yarns, but learning stuff about, so like your one with Flinny, that I listened to the other day, was just off the hook. I've got no idea who he was, but what a story. What a story.
Yeah, he'd had a story, all right, and he had no filter, so it was a good one, that one.
No filter, bro. Yeah.
Oh, but what a story you've had, and what a journey. Yeah, really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of that. But as always, we've gone to the Instagram for some questions, and a good face of the TAB. Lots of messages have come in for you.
Oh dear.
Let me find it. Where is it? Here he is. Okay. First question. Would you rather the Turbos win the Ranfurly Shield or the All Blacks win the next World Cup?
Turbo Shield all day.
All day.
I was there the day. I was there the day they lost it in 1978, and I will not go to my grave till I'm there the day they've won it. I've been to every Shield challenge since 1978 except 2.
Really? Wow.
I'm committed.
You are committed to the cause, and now they've got those couple of secret signings. This could be their year.
Wait for the signing that's going to come out soon.
You're at 12, aren't you? Okay.
I've signed an All Black. There you go. I'll tell you that.
Oh, jeez. The teaser. How much does the TAB love it when there's a draw in a match? Must be a bumper payday.
Yeah, generally it is like a rugby match. Yeah, I remember once before there was multi-bets, we used to do winning team and margin double. So you go this team 12 and draw sort of paid about moon money, like $500-600. And one weekend in Super Rugby, the 2 games we'd put in the multi was a draw. No one had it. The next weekend, everyone took it. We were like losing $1 gazillion, but neither of them was a draw. But generally, draws are pretty good.
Yeah.
Not the draw half-time, full-time, because that's quite popular, but the draw full-time by itself's all right.
Yeah, the half-time one happens quite often, Okay, 3 sportsmen that you'd love to go on a night out with.
or on a night out. Okay, so it's not just me. It's like have a proper night out.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley.
Oh.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Jeez.
Just because his offcasts would be like incredible. And one more. Marty Banks.
Oh, great choice.
Yeah, because you can't be the ugliest one in the group.
That's true. Okay, most embarrassing TV blunder you've made.
Oh, I remember once when Justin Marshall was playing and we were doing the pre-game, and off camera, like I've told Justin Marshall this myself actually, but when he was playing, I thought he was an absolute wanker. I couldn't stand him. And we were talking off camera, and I can't remember who I was talking to, and I'd used the C word when I was talking about Justin.
Yeah.
And then it was like all of a sudden I was on live, and I turned around and I said, well, it's no surprise that the favourites tonight are Canterbury. Yeah, so I said the C word on TV. It was pretty bad. Pretty bad.
Oh, that's good stuff. Okay, the most surprising sports character that you've met, what you thought they'd be like versus what they were.
Ma Nonu.
Yeah.
First time I met him, I'd booked an interview with him for Sky, and I said, oh, hey, Ma, as he's walking past, he goes, I don't have to talk to you. And I said, oh, who do you think you are? And he went, oh, okay. And I just stood up to him.
Yeah. And
we became friends. And so he'd always come across as a brash, arrogant, bully, all of that. He is one of the softest, nicest blokes, does heaps for kids, heaps for charities, really cares. And as an example, a few years later, I was doing a story for Sky. He must have been bringing up 100th game or something. We were up at his house,
yeah,
and had been going for ages. And I said, oh, mate, can we just pause? Because he lived by the airport. I said, I've just got to pop down and pick up my parents from the airport. They're coming back from Australia.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah, we'll go in my car. So we jumped into his car and drove to the airport. And he said, when they come through, what's their names? I said, Bruce and Virginia. And he said, when they come through, point them out. And so they come through the doors from International. I said, those two there. And he goes, Bruce, Virginia. Like this. And Dad's like, man, no. And he grabs all their bags and put it on the ute. And they came up and watched the rest of the filming, made them a cup of tea, and away we went.
Oh,
that's the sort of bloke he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the most surprising.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely has the stereotype of a person who he's not actually is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. What is your best and worst moment working with ants on Head, Heart and Balls? A lot of people love Head, Heart and Balls.
Yeah, we're fishing at making a comeback with that.
Oh,
just quietly.
Yeah.
Best and worst moments. Probably the best was the day he'd had a nose operation at hospital on the morning of the show, and he discharged himself and walked in and did the show with the drip that they'd had up his nose hanging out, his hospital gown on, nothing on underneath, because the hospital's just up the road from the studio and full of morphine, and did a show. That was probably the worst. Was probably all of the others, because he's 24 hours he glistens with perspiration. He's the most sweating human, and an ex-girlfriend told me that his underpants are made of chamois material because he sweats so much. How bad's that? How bad's that?
Oh, ants! What a lad. Okay, next question. Best multi you've heard of?
Ooh. Best multi I've heard of was probably, I'm going to guess the amount of time ago. I'm going to go about 8 years ago. And it was a race meeting at Ellerslie between Boxing Day, New Year, somewhere around there. And a guy took an 8-leg horse multi. And then he took 7 leg, a 6 leg, and a 5 leg.
Oh, yeah.
7 of them, 7 out of 8 won. And he told a few of his mates what he'd done, and they did it as well. And 7 of them won. If 8 of them had have won, it would have been millions, but it was like 850 grand. And he only outlaid about $500.
True.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's good stuff. Was it all in the same meeting? Nah.
Yeah, back-to-back races.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. What a tip. Okay, next one. Favorite ground to present on?
Oh, Forsyth Bar.
Is it? Yeah.
Like, the zoo is, it takes you back to, not childhood, but early adulthood. Like, the zoo crowd are so awesome. Like, they are juiced, but not once did I see trouble. Not once did I see a fight.
Yeah.
It was like good humor, great drunk students, first years and all that. So much so, one year they said, come and watch the game with us. Because, so I said, okay. They always used to see me and chant my name and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't an ego thing. It was just a good fun. And then I particularly remember one day I was standing there and I said, and the floor manager would go, when he says such a word, I want you to all wave your flags. So I'd say the Highlanders, and I'd turn around and say the Highlanders, and they'd all wave their flags. Yeah. But as soon as I started, there was a group of about 12 guys, and they just banging on the fence, Staffy's a good cunt. And it was crystal clear through the microphones. So I went up and watched the game with them, and then they said, come back to the halls for a few jars. So I was back at the bloody first year university students, all getting on the sauce with the boys and the girls. And it was awesome. It was all just good, clean fun, no scraps, but the atmosphere there is off the hook. It's an amazing playing surface. Yeah. There's club sandwiches, there's sushi in the photographer's room, happy days.
Oh, they need more. They need more stadiums like that around New Zealand, eh?
Oh boy, do they! Yeah.
Okay, what's your favourite thing to do in Thailand? You mentioned Thailand earlier in the pod, so this must.
Yeah, I've probably been there 6 or 7 times. 3 of them I went to. Actually, it sounds weird, but I love going to Muay Thai boxing camps. So 3 of my trips, that's what I did. Yeah, so. For 3-week stints, and you just go crazy. It starts at 6 in the morning, with a 2-hour Muay Thai training session, and then you have breakfast. Then you do a 2-hour like cardio or weight session. Then you have lunch. Then you do 2 hours Muay Thai. Then you do yoga, and then you cooked. I sometimes took the afternoon off and went to the beach though, but it's awesome. It's all and it's away from all the tourist hotspots. As well. It's right at the southern tip of Phuket. So, I love Thailand. I love the Thai people, but away from the touristy areas.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that answer, but that's good stuff. Okay, 3 most underrated players you've watched that should have been All Blacks.
Wow, should have been All Blacks. That's a goodie.
Yeah.
Should have been All Blacks. Wow. James and Tom. Should have been All Blacks. I reckon David Howell could have gone real close. If only had a little bit more speed. Yeah. He was absolute quality.
Yeah.
So he'd be one. Gee, that's hard. Maybe Jamie Booth.
Oh, he will be though, won't he?
Boothie might be getting a little bit old now. I love Jamie Booth. He'd go good in the All Blacks, I reckon.
Yeah.
And someone like so many get All Black tests now, eh? That it's pretty easier to name 3 that shouldn't have, but I can't think of another one, Jimmy.
No, that's all right.
I'd go way back to Dale Atkins, who couldn't get rid of Zinzan Brook and Buck Shelford, but that's a long time ago. But
he sounds like a lad. Okay, next question. From Reggie Goods. What's your thoughts on breeding future sports stars, e.g. Lomu versus Valerie Adams? Not a great example from Normie, but
I'm looking forward to Richie and Gemma McCaw's offspring. Holy hecker.
Yeah.
That'll be phenomenal.
Dan Carter and Honna as well.
And Honna, yeah, true. And they've got like 4 or 3 and one more on the way. Jeez. Yeah, they'll be.
Are you a fan of it? Breeding sports stars?
Oh, not intentionally.
I see they're doing that. They're doing some of that in China, eh? That's the next big thing. Is
yeah, breeding athletes. Like, I've heard that in China, when you're like a teenager, they come and test your VO2 max, your height, your weight, your wingspan, and all that, and say, right, you're a volleyballer, go. Yeah, they find out the right size and shape. Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind if it happens incidentally, but not intentionally. I'm just concerned which athlete Reg Goods has got his eye on.
Yeah. Okay. Who's winning this year's Super Rugby?
I'm sort of probably the Crusaders again, just because that's the safe thing to say. I think the Blues might give it a shake, eh? Whoops, there goes my. I'm on. Sorry, I think the Blues might give it a shake.
Yeah, fair enough. What about the Canes?
Yeah, good semi-finalists.
Out of 5.
Good semi-finalists.
There's no semi-finals this year.
Good top 4 side.
Okay, last question. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's going through a tough time at the moment, what would it be?
It would be, don't expect answers today or solutions today or tomorrow. And it's just like, people say, take it a day at a time. Well, for me, like, a day's too long. It's like, go down to 10-minute blocks. I got down to 10-minute blocks. Yeah. Like, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to wash the dishes. Wash the dishes, it's a win. Yeah. Sounds stupid, but it's just those baby steps, and just things will come right. I mean, I still haven't got a full-time job. I've nearly been unemployed for like 8 months now. Well, not unemployed, but you know what I mean? I want a full-time, meaningful job, and just, you know, it'll happen. Keep surging, keep charging, keep doing things, and find little things that you like painting, as I say, it's not going to fix it, but it gives you a mental holiday, and take those little mental holidays. If it's golf, if it's walking a dog, if it's throwing a frisbee, if it's making muffins, if it's just have little things with nice little wins, and acknowledge the win. Yeah, acknowledge the win, and then set up your next one, even if it's hanging your washing out. You know, doesn't have to be winning gold medals.
Yeah. Geez, that's powerful stuff, and great advice from the man himself. Well, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Staffy. I've obviously got to know you a little bit throughout the career. Loved seeing you before games. Loved coming up and having a quick yarn to you before kickoffs and seeing what the staff special was, or getting the odds off you. And, yeah, your smiley face is infectious, and you're just a really good person, genuine good guy who's willing to help anyone out. And really appreciate you giving up your time and sharing your story so honestly, and I'm sure a lot of listeners will get a lot out of that. So, yeah, really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Yes, Jimmy, mate. You need a painting for that wall behind you too, by the way. It's very bare.
Let's sort something out, mate. I'll be in touch.
Okay. See you, mate.
Hey, cheers, mate.
All right, buddy. My phone was just dying. It was like 20%, then 10%. That's perfect. Why I kept going black. Yeah.
We made it. Hey, thanks for that.
No worries, brother.
That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Mate.
Thanks.
Take care. See you, boy.
Yeah.